Crazy news. The US government just made a purchase for its strategic reserve, and it wasn't Bitcoin, it was the peso. Yeah, you heard me right. The US government just made a purchase for its strategic reserve in a dying fiat currency before it bought the best money ever made. And when asked if it was a bailout, this is what Scott Bessent had to say.
So this isn't a bailout?
Sorry, it's not a bailout at all. There's no money being transferred.
This is a bold-faced lie. This wasn't just a swap. You said yourself that we purchased pesos directly. At the same time this week, Scott Bessent also declared war on China, Russia, and big banks, signaling we're at the beginning of a global economic war. And it's the shift away from the dollar that analysts like Ledn and Larry Lepard are talking about that has my ears perked up. While the US government not purchasing Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset is a slap in the face, like my Eagles getting slapped last night by the Giants, the groundwork is being laid for an economic explosion over the next decade. The fiat meltdown is beginning right in front of our eyes. We're gonna see what this thing is all about on today's episode of Bitcoin Simply. Let's go.
Explain to our viewers what is going on with Argentina, because the U.S. Treasury today directly purchased Argentine pesos and finalized this $20 billion currency swap framework with Argentina's central bank. So the intent, I guess, is to provide assistance from the Latin American country's economic turmoil. It's clear how Argentina benefits from this deal. What do we get out of it?
We get a lot out of it. Argentina is a beacon in Latin America. President Milei has done the right thing. He is trying to break 100 years of a bad cycle in Argentina. He is also a great ally for the U.S. He'll be coming to the Oval Office next Tuesday, and he is committed to getting China out of Argentina.
Did you hear that? That's what this is all about. It's about China. The U.S. is declaring war on China by opportunistically bailing out the Argentinian peso, which is one of the worst fiat currencies in the world. They're assembling a global economic alliance. Scott Bessent and the U.S. are making it very clear. They're seeking to forge alliances that weaken China and also continue to propagate the dollar across the globe. Here's another interview from Bessent this week that confirms this exact thing.
There's already sanctions on Russia. The president urged all the NATO countries to place tariffs on China if it continues to buy Russian oil. What more can we do financially to put the squeeze on Russia here?
Laura, good to be with you. And we're doing a lot on Russia, but the real culprits here have been the China and India in terms of buying Russian oil. They are keeping the Russian war machine going, and we put a 25% Russian oil tariff on India. And I think soon we're going to see a rebalancing where they're buying less Russian oil, more American oil. And if we were to do the same thing on China, I think the war would end quickly, but we need our NATO or European allies to join us. It's sources and uses, and the source of the Russian money is this oil, and China's the leading buyer.
So it's ag and oil. And do you think, in your estimation, you've run all the numbers, would this war be possible now were it not for China and India's involvement in those purchases?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
so they're
not.
Keeping the war going.
They're keeping the war going. But as I said, it's my strong belief that India is going to start rebalancing over the next few weeks and months, and we will see a diminishment of Russian oil in favor of U.S. oil.
They're trying to hit China's wallet where it hurts fast, and they're calling on our allies to help us. And that means, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering into an economic war, one where the United States dollar slowly loses power in favor of a bunch of other alliances. Some might call this a multipolar world, as central bankers stack gold at unprecedented rates all across the country. The United States dollar is slowly losing its reserve currency power, as central banks begin stacking gold at unprecedented rates all across the globe. Alliances will begin happening between other countries together for raw commodities and other raw materials in what they call swaps. This is going to remove market share for the US dollar. The US's only hope is to begin striking deals with these other countries, as demand for our currency via treasuries is continuing to decline. Ledn spoke about this in an amazing conversation that she had with BTC Sessions earlier this week. It's an amazing convo if you haven't already heard it, and she says that Q4 is going to be pretty bullish for Bitcoin.
It means that if anything, gold is actually on the verge of flipping treasuries as the number one reserve asset. And so I think what replaces the dollar is not not something that looks like the dollar, not like, China currency, enters an 80-year period of being the global reserve currency to the same degree. It's not like that. It's two things. It's one, neutral reserve assets becoming more relevant. So gold's the big incumbent. Obviously, we're both bullish on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a really powerful one because it's not only a reserve asset, it's also a settlement network. So some of the smaller ones are dabbling in that, El Salvador, Kingdom of Bhutan, some others. And then two, more bilateral trade agreements. So not necessarily this is like some BRICS currency per se, but that, China buys agricultural products from Brazil in Chinese currency, or China buys Russian energy in Chinese currency. So China is kind of a big hub, but not to the same degree. It's more like with their own trading partners. And then to some extent, India and Russia have their agreements, and India and Brazil have their agreements, and kind of a collection of not necessarily friends, but mutually aligned partners have more of their own kind of non-dollar trading situation. And so I think and I've been writing about this literally since 2020, is that we enter a more multipolar world. So not a single fiat currency replacing us, but more gold, more Bitcoin, more bilateral non-dollar systems. And the dollar still might be the biggest for a long time. But instead of being like the only game in town, it's like one of the big games in town. Maybe still the single biggest, but it's a plurality rather than dominant.
But she nails it on the head. We're moving to a multipolar world. And all of this is positive for Bitcoin because just like gold, well, Bitcoin is one of the only other things in the world that you cannot manipulate. And that's why central bankers will begin acquiring Bitcoin.
Bitcoin wraps around all of this, independent of it being a reserve currency, which I think it just has better fundamentals because you don't have central bankers who can print money out of thin air and inflate the money that you have in your bank account or in your pocket. Every single day that goes by, your US dollar gets less and less valuable because they're printing more and more money. You can't do it with that Bitcoin. You can't do that with Bitcoin. It can only go up over time because there's a fixed amount of 21 million.
Gold and Bitcoin are the hard money outside of the fiat system, and that's why it will continue to go up. And that's the next decade that we're looking at. People are acquiring gold because they realize that Jerome Powell is an emperor without clothes, meaning that his ability to affect policy rates actually has no impact. They have no control in the market at the Fed anymore. And so you begin acquiring assets that cannot be manipulated out of the system. We're going to get to a great clip from Larry Lepard, who talks about this exact thing and what this means for the next decade in Bitcoin and commodities as we look at the structural changes happening, a declining trust in the Fed, and also this multipolar world that Lynn just talked about. But before we do that, let's thank our sponsors. Ledn has been the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans since 2018, allowing you to get fiat for your Bitcoin that you've been stacking relentlessly since you've been watching this channel over the past several years without selling it. They allow you to borrow up to 50% loan to value on your Bitcoin. So if you want a $4,000 loan in fiat, well, you post $8,000 in Bitcoin collateral. It happens super fast, actually in less than 6 hours. The application takes just 2 minutes and there's no credit checks. Interest rates start at just 12.4%, and this allows you to remain sovereign without entering into the credit system. Get 0.25% off your first loan by going to learn.ledn.io/simply today. We want to thank the Bitcoin Way, the leaders in helping you to protect your generational wealth the right way, privately, safely, securely, and confidently, so that you can pass down generational wealth. You want to leave an inheritance for your children's children, and you can do that by getting a coach. They'll have a member of their team sit down with you and walk you through step by step how you do this, starting from how do you remove your Bitcoin from exchanges. Schedule a free 30-minute consultation with their team at thebitcoinway.com/simplybitcoin. Let's get back to the show. More and more, we are getting people to join our team, like Larry talked about at the end of the video.
Powell is bluffing. He says we're going to get inflation back to 2%. He says we haven't lost control, even though he has. And the market believes him because the forward swaps are at 275 for 5-year inflation. It's bullshit, but people believe him. When things start to break, he will have to change his tune well before the inflation rate is 2%. And everyone's going to go, that's interesting. He really has lost control. He cannot get inflation down. All those guys who've been talking about inflation is inevitable, they are right. And then you're going to see just an enormous movement of capital from other things into our things. There's $450 trillion of fiat shit in the world. Cash, stocks, and bonds. All of Bitcoin, what is it today? 350 billion, 400 billion? So we're 450 trillion, 400 billion of Bitcoin. Let's call it 6 or 7 trillion of sound money. Bitcoin, gold stocks. Okay. 450 trill of unsound money, bonds, cash, and stocks. When a quorum of the people come to the conclusion that they can never stop printing and that it is inevitable that they will have to continue to print, they are going to say, please protect my assets in stuff that cannot be printed. All it takes, it doesn't take the whole 450 coming into Bitcoin or gold for us to go way up in price. Even if only 10% of it comes in, that's $45 trillion chasing 7. How much does the value of our stuff have to go up? You know, it's true that in 1980, when gold was very hot and very, everyone thought inflation would go on forever, right at the peak of that market before Volcker tamed it. Okay, in 1980, gold represented 20% of all financial assets, at that time. I mean, gold and Bitcoin today represent less than 1% of all financial assets. So there's plenty of upside here in the sound money stuff, if one assumes that they can never stop printing. And I believe that, with every bone in my body, I believe that. I think other people are coming to believe that, but for our stuff to work, we need more people to believe that. And, human beings do tend to, want to protect themselves. And so, as the word spreads and as the inflation continues to get bad or worse, more and more people are becoming aware, right? I mean, more and more people are being orange pilled, more and more people are aware of inflation, more and more people are interested in gold. I mean, everyone kind of gets it. I mean, this thing is broken. I mean, California, let's send out checks to help with inflation. Oh, that's a good idea. Spain just announced they're doing that.
More and more people are beginning to see ads like, your loyalty points on this credit card are absolutely worthless. Earn Bitcoin with every purchase, like this ad in Times Square from Gemini. People are also seeing front page ads saying that you should buy Bitcoin over gold in India. This is slowly going to get to retail. As we know, the smart money happens in institutions and companies first. And on that note, more and more institutions continue to stack Bitcoin. In fact, more institutions have already bought more Bitcoin than they did in 2024, thus far in October in 2025, meaning we have 2 months left, and the last 2 months of the year are actually pretty bullish for Bitcoin always. And they're realizing what we all should realize. It's just math. And eventually, this thing is going to continue to rise.
I think a lot of companies are doing it. Like you can consider Bitcoin to be an alternative savings account. You can consider it to be like gold, where it's shown a track record over 16 years of just going up. It has its ups and downs, and people say it's volatile, but like if you look at the long range, if you go to your stocks app and you look at all, you see every 4 years it does the same thing, and it just consistently goes up fairly predictably because it's math. And I think companies have understood that, and they're like, this is a hedge against the dollar. I know the dollars I keep in the bank are losing value. So instead of having that, why don't I have Bitcoin that's gaining in value?
So even though we hit all-time highs this week and we've continued to chop sideways, well, the economic turbulence happening from this global economic war that's starting shows you that the system is changing right in front of our eyes. Pay attention, play the long game, don't get shaken out of your position. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. And if you haven't already gotten your tickets to the largest Bitcoin mining expo in the world, happening at the Mining Disrupt Conference in Dallas, Texas from November 11th to November 13th, well, use the promo code SimplyBitcoin for 20% off your tickets. Can't wait to see you there. Like and subscribe to the channel if you already haven't done so. Happy stacking.